Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. What's up, fellas? Dominic rolling solo here today, and it's been a little while since we've done one of these solo episodes. I think it's been a little over a month now since I made the announcement that we were moving from 2 podcasts a week down to 1, and I've missed this one-on-one solo time with you. And I've had a number of deep thoughts in my mind and in my heart that I wanted to come on and share with you. And I also wanted to get you a little excited for and maybe tease out the fact that Brian and I have been scheming and devising and concocting a pretty cool plan for the last quarter of the year, the final 13 episodes of the year that we're going to be bringing to you on the podcast. And actually, Brian and I are going to be recording the first of those 13 episodes in about a couple hours. One of the things that we love about the show, and you told us that you've loved about the show, is the fact that we cover a wide-ranging set of topics that are important to a guy who's looking at living a great man life. Right? We talk about purpose, high-performance habits, masculinity, sexuality, all these kinds of things, which is great. And we also love bringing you special guests from, all walks of life to come and teach us about these subjects, which is amazing. And we've also recognized that many of you are listeners. Many of the men in our masterminds, many of the men in our Facebook group for men have been going through a personal revolution of sorts recently, right? An inner world transformation, transitions in work and in personal lives. And there's a lot of struggle and a lot of turmoil, a lot of pain and discombobulation that comes from making such massive changes. Anytime that we come to the close of a year, we oftentimes get much more reflective about the year in reverse and also who we want to become in the year in advance. So we thought this would be a really cool time to focus our energy and attentions around one particular theme that will allow you to close this year feeling strong, fortify your inner foundation, and start 2022 feeling in total command of your life. And so I don't want to spoil the surprise, but Brian and I will be unveiling that to you in the coming weeks. All right, so in today's episode, I'm going to give you 3 quick hits on what's going on in my mind, in my heart, because I'm also someone who's going through a pretty massive revolution in my work and in my personal lives. And these 3 categories that I want to share with you today are also thematic of what I see a lot of men grappling with in our communities. These are the themes of money, sex, and identity, right? Identity, your personal self-concept. Instead of going deep on any one of those categories, I'm going to stay at a high level and give you a wide range of thoughts around these 3 really important topics. So let's start with money first. I just finished reading one of, I would say, the top 3 books of this year for me personally. And it's a book called The Soul of Money, Transforming Your Relationship with Money and Life by Lynne Twist. And I posted this in the Facebook group just a couple of days ago, and it seems like a lot of guys are jumping on this book. This book was gifted to me by a dear friend of mine, Mark Krasner, who is in my men's group, that has a particular knack for just getting the right book to me at the right time. I always have like 30 to 40 books truly sitting in my queue of books to read. But when he recommends a book, I stop whatever it is I'm doing and I read it because he's never failed me. Last year, it was the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which became quickly one of the top 3 most important books of 2020 for me. And The Soul of Money by Lynne Twist quickly became one of the most important books for me of this year. Now, when this book first arrived at my doorstep, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even really interested in reading it. I didn't really think there was a lot for me to learn about my relationship with money because in my mind, I already had a healthy, empowering relationship with money. But money is a lot like family in the sense of even if you have a great relationship with your family, there's still some significant areas of dysfunction, right, that need to be addressed. And for others of us, right, money and family can be completely dysfunctional. The Soul of Money, again, gets at the why of your relationship with money. And sitting at the center of this book is the concept of most of us have a scarcity relationship with money instead of a sufficiency relationship with money. Scarcity to sufficiency. And while that concept may not sound revolutionary, I've certainly heard that before. The way that Lynne Twist unpacks it and the way she encourages you to look at it was revolutionary for me. And let me get specific about what I mean from that. When I was in financial services, I had a very predictable pay schedule. I had a base salary, yearly bonuses, and quarterly incentive comp. And I always knew I was going to make far more than I was going to spend. Right? I grew up with a very conservative family. It always taught me to, make money, save an allowance, put it away for a rainy day. And that's exactly the behavior I took into my later years in life as an adult, making my own money. And I've been fortunate enough to build up a nest egg where I'm doing okay. But what I started to realize as I was reading this book is that as an entrepreneur, where my cash flow is a lot less certain, I've actually started to develop some tightness around money, some scarcity around money. In this world that I'm in right now, where I'm launching I run masterminds and I do coaching programs, the money is lumpy. There is no base salary. There are times of the year where I'm launching certain things with a completely unpredictable set of circumstances around how many people are going to want to come in and not. I have a full-time employee that gets paid a base salary, a bonus, healthcare, retirement benefits. There's everything that I spend for this business comes out of my pocket. And sometimes I can get pretty scarce around that, right? If I need a cash flow infusion, I have to go liquidate holdings, maybe not at opportune times. All of that starts to fuel stress levels in my life. And I started to notice how that impacts how I interact with money, how I spend it, how I make it, these kinds of things, right? What I do when people ask me to donate it, those kinds of things. Secondly, and this was really important, Lynne Twist encourages us to look at the flow of our money, where it comes from and where it goes and how we feel about it. And that concept was revolutionary for me. And here's why. When I peeled back the layers of the onion, I started to realize that 100% of the money that comes to me in my business is infused with the hopes, the dreams, and the desires of men who are looking to make a difference in their lives. Not just in their lives, but the lives of their families, of their friends, of the businesses that they run or are involved with, and the communities in which they operate. 100% of that money carries with it the hopes and the dreams of becoming better men, of breaking through limiting beliefs, of impacting the lives of those around them. And it's so easy for me to miss that when I'm only concerned with paying the bills or looking at the fact that maybe cash flow is a little bit tight in this quarter of the year. When I go to Whole Foods and one bag of groceries costs me $100 to get tight around that. Instead, when I start to swim in the reality of how beautiful the energy of the money that's coming to me, I move from a place of scarcity into sufficiency and abundance. And what that then does for me is when I go to spend that money, whether it's with Callie Simon, who's my full-time employee, paying her salary, her 401k, her healthcare, instead of feeling tight around that, it feels like this is coming from these men who want to make a difference in their lives. And it's going to a person who I care deeply about. So she can actually have a job that she loves doing while also giving back to these men to create the lives that they want in support of them and in support of me. And in this $100 bag of groceries, it contains my bulletproof coffee that allows me to nourish myself and get my creative juices flowing in the morning so I can do a podcast like this that reaches men who need a message like this right now. It contains the grass-fed burger that nourishes my body so I can go and do the workouts that I like to do that keeps me strong and keeps me alive and fit and focused so I can do this for the long haul. On and on, the cycle continues. Can you guys see how the flow of money, understanding the flow of money and focusing on the sufficient elements of it versus the scarce elements of it can have a revolutionary impact on your relationship with the soul of money? And the last big key awareness that was also a major aha for me was how I was starting to experience money in this realm as a coach and as a leader of men's community, money as a burden. Ooh, this is a big one. So when I was in financial services and I was a salesperson and I was making, on certain deals that I would close significant sums of money, there was almost an entitlement to that money. And what I mean by that is there were a bunch of actuaries who developed a compensation program that was well established, agreed upon at the highest levels of the organization that said, if you sell X deal, you make Y money. And we all agree upon that. And as long as you sell the deal and as long as it converts, you get paid Y money. So for me, when I sold a deal and the calculation came out, I felt entitled to that money as long as, the deal came over and helped to execute it. So there were some deals where I didn't have to work incredibly hard and I made really good money. And that transaction, when it was done, I didn't feel any further obligation. Right? Okay, this was the calculation. It was agreed upon. Good, done. In this world, when a man writes a check, which is infused with the hopes and the dreams of revolutionizing his life, I started to take on an extraordinary level of burden and responsibility for each and every man who's walked through the door, which means I couldn't just let a man invest and come into this work and have an average experience. Like a man who came into this work and invested money on his behalf, I felt like I needed to deliver 100 times the value of what he invested. While on some level, there's a virtue to that, and there's a beauty in wanting to support a man in that way, it's also crippling. It's also a burden. It's also unsustainable. It's also unrealistic. And I could start to see that I was blocking more money coming my way because when I thought about the money coming to me and the extraordinary responsibility that would come along with that, I'd say, I'd rather not have it. And there were certain times I can look at over the past 4 or 5 years as an entrepreneur where I've definitely turned down money or haven't gone after money that could, in fact, come into this business to infuse the work that we're doing, to elevate, to hire help that I didn't take on because I felt like I had to give back 100-fold what a man brought to me. And in reading this book, it allowed me to expose that limiting, unsustainable, unrealistic belief. And I'm now in the process of working through that. So that's The Soul of Money by Lynne Twist. Highly recommend it. I'm going to link that in the show notes. Let's get into our second topic. One of our fan favorites, one of my favorites, the topic of sex. This conversation is inspired by the episode that we released 2 weeks ago, episode 264, called A Step-by-Step Blueprint to Better Sexual Conversations with Your Woman, featuring Hannah Diendorfer. First of all, I got to tell you that I'm frustrated with you. I'm frustrated with you because when you like an episode, I very rarely hear it from you. But when women like an episode, they beat down my door to make sure that I know that they love that episode and they want more of it. This episode, which is geared towards you guys, the episode on A Step-by-Step Blueprint for Better Sexual Conversations with Your Woman, is geared towards you. I had no fewer than like a dozen women send me DMs, text messages, phone calls to tell me how much they loved that episode with Hannah, that they've been screaming for information like that to reach the men of this world. I always pay attention to when women listen to our episodes, especially episodes and content that I put out that are really geared towards you guys, that they celebrate. Because what it means is we've struck a chord. What it means is they feel seen and they feel heard. And what that means is we should pay the fuck attention, guys, because that means that we're actually hitting on something that's of importance to them. So when I started to realize that this episode, which was geared towards you guys, really resonated with the women of our community, I got curious. And I wanted to ask them 3 more follow-up questions, which I posed to them on my Instagram stories. And I wanted to share the survey results with you, which I did put out in an email, my weekly email that comes out every week. Some of you may have already seen these results, but I haven't had a chance to really articulate my reactions to them. Here are the 3 questions that I asked, the first of 3. Number 1, in your experience, do men typically invite you into having pre-sex conversations about your desires, your boundaries, how your body is feeling in this moment, etc.? And of the 309 women who responded, 91% of them said no. Men do not typically invite me into pre-sex conversations about desires, boundaries, and how I'm feeling, etc. before we get into sex. Guys, 91% of women said no to that. Let me connect the dots here. This episode on how to have better sexual conversations with your partner was one of the most celebrated episodes we've ever done by the women of our community, which is telling you that they want to be invited into these conversations so that there can be better communication, so the trust can be deeper, so additional layers and textures of sexuality can be explored. I can't recommend highly enough to listen to that episode number 264. I'll link it in the show notes on how to have a better conversation, because Hannah lays out the blueprint, like truly lays out, here's how you invite your woman to have the conversation. Here's the questions to ask her. Here's how to hold the space. Soup to nuts, she gives you the blueprint. The second question I asked, and remember, this is geared towards women, when you've established a boundary or said no to something sexually, does the man thank you for communicating that, or does he react with disappointment or resistance? When you've established a boundary or said no to something, does the man thank you for communicating that, or does he react with disappointment and resistance? Only 1/3 of the women said that the man thanks them for that, and 2/3 of the women said he responds with disappointment or resistance. One of the things that Hannah taught in that conversation is, in order for her to feel safe, in order for the women in her community, and she does a lot of sex coaching, to feel safe with their partner, they need to know that their no, their boundaries will be honored and respected. So when she says, no, I don't feel comfortable doing this, or no, I don't feel comfortable going to this place, or no, today, I don't want to do that position, even though we did it yesterday because my body's feeling different, or because I just am a no. To thank her for that, for communicating that, praising that no, allows her to feel much more safe, much more trusting of the space that she's entered. And when 2/3 of women are saying that they're being met with resistance or disappointment, there's a lack of trust. What I asked Hannah in that episode was like, listen, what if though, what if there's a true disappointment? Like, what if there is a desire for a man to connect with, his partner more deeply, and there's a constant maybe no to sex, or no to going deeper, no to being more adventurous? Like, that would be disappointing, right? And she said, absolutely, that's welcome. And the first step in that process is to thank her, to honor that, to honor the fact that you're communicating above and beyond everything else what's true for you, and accept that. And from that place, then we can have a deeper conversation about our respective desires and what's standing in the way of that. But if the first reaction is disappointment and resistance, that's where trust collapses. The third and final question that I asked was, number 3, on average, how do you feel about the level of aftercare you've received from your man? And aftercare means after the physical sex is over, how does he care for you emotionally? On average, how do you feel about the level of aftercare you've received from your man? Aftercare meaning what happens after the physical sex is over. Are you cared for emotionally, energetically? 29% of the women said that they are satisfied with the aftercare they received from their man. 71% said there's room for improvement. Only 29% of the women said they're satisfied with the level of emotional aftercare they received after the physical sex is over. 70% of women said there's room for improvement. So guys, what that means is, Brian and I have talked about this. Oftentimes after sex is over, you're exhausted, you want to flop over, pass out, or you just jump right out of bed, you grab a towel and clean up the mess, and then you just go on to doing what you were doing. We've all been there before. And what we're hearing very clearly from the women who have responded to this, that's not enough for them. The place that a lot of us go to, whether men even know this or not, men and women, or however you identify, when we enter that realm of sex, we go beyond our physical bodies sometimes. There's like an emotional place that we can hit that after the sex is over, we need to reestablish our center in our bodies. And that's not going to happen if we flop over, disengage with our partner emotionally, or run into the shower, or run to go grab a towel and then just go back into our iPads. there's a process of landing the plane that feels better for both parties emotionally. And we can hear that the women in our community are feeling like they're lacking in that regard. So if you get to those three questions, guys, women are feeling like 90% of women feel like they're not having the pre-sex conversations that they desire. 66%, 2/3 of women are feeling like they're being met with resistance when they establish a boundary. And 70% of women are feeling like they're not cared for emotionally in the way that they would want to after the sex is over. There are extraordinary realms of opportunity here, guys, to have more and better sex with your partner. So I highly encourage you to listen to episode 264 with Hannah. If you haven't already, listen to it again if you have. And if you haven't invited your partner, if you have one, to listen with you, that one we've heard from the couples who have listened has been a home run. And as we round the corner and head for home, we've arrived at our third and final topic of today, which is your identity. We're going to take a few minutes to explore perhaps the single greatest driver of your behavior in life, which is your identity, your self-concept, who you believe yourself to be. James Clear writes about this beautifully in the book Atomic Habits, and he oftentimes says that our efforts to change our behaviors fail because we try to change the wrong thing. We try to change our behaviors instead of trying to change our identity. For example, if you say that you want to stop being a people pleaser, but deep down in the core of your identity, you believe that what gives you value is pleasing others, then in the long run, you are going to continue pleasing others. For example, if you're overweight and you're feeling unhealthy and you want to lose that weight, but deep down in your core, you believe that you're the heavy guy. That's who you've always been, who you always will be. Then maybe you will lose weight for a period of time, but the heavy guy is always going to win out. As we've heard from two of our podcast guests, Mordecai and Mike DeCourcy, who both talked about that identity and the shift they had to make, the identity shift they had to make in order to make the behavior change sustainable. And for example, if you say that you want to find work-life balance in your life because you're tired of being overwhelmed and sleep deprived and on the verge of burnout, but at your core, your work is your identity, then your work will always win out. Do you guys see how critically important it is to inspect your identity and to ask the question, how much of my identity is being consciously created of my own choosing, and how much of it has been formed unconsciously from all the stuff in the past that I didn't really choose with conscious awareness? You may have tons of evidence in your life that you're the heavy guy, or that you're the people pleaser, or that you're the workaholic, or whatever other story, because however many years of your life have given you proof and evidence that that's who you've been. It is not who you need to believe you will be in the future. This is where it's so important to get clear on. This is why we always talk about who is that great man within you. The great man within you is this vision of yourself, this conscious creation of who you are when you're at your best, who you desire to become, and then allowing that desire to become burning. There's a difference between a plain desire and a burning desire. Plain desire is, man, it would be nice to have that. A burning desire is, I must have that. There's a big difference. There's no choice in the I must have that. Like, it's going to happen. I am going to be the man who's healthy, making sustainable choices for my nutrition, for my workout, for my lifestyle, so that I'm healthy for the rest of my life and I can be around till I'm old and gray for my kids. I am no longer a workaholic. I'm the man who can prioritize his work and be a super high performer. And actually, I can perform higher when I actually have space in my life, and I do take pride in my work, but I am not my work. That's a declaration that can be made and can be lived into with conscious creation action over a long period of time. James Clear says that the two biggest steps to identity change are, number one, create the new identity that you desire. And number two, prove it to yourself with small actions over time. And the last thing I want to say on this, guys, and perhaps this might be the most crucial thing I can tell you about sustainable identity change, is who you surround yourself with is absolutely essential for sustainable identity change. For example, what if the number one reason why you may be feeling chronically overworked and sleep deprived and on the verge of burnout is because that's normalized behavior amongst the people who you spend the most amount of time with? What if the reason why you sacrifice going after your hopes and your dreams and settle for something that's maybe more safe and predictable and secure is because that's normalized behavior amongst the people who you spend the most amount of time with? Those are incredible. You're just swimming in the same direction as the stream that you've chosen to swim in. And what I would encourage you to do is look for new streams of water that are flowing in the direction that you aspire to head into. Steve Wilt, who's one of the men in the Great Man Mastermind, who came on the show a couple months ago to tell his story about how he chose to give up alcohol, not from a place of hitting rock bottom. He was at the pinnacle of his financial career, his relationship with his wife, but he realized in order to get to that next level of being his great man, he knew he could never do it with his present day relationship with alcohol, so he decided to give it up. He was the guy who 6 days a week in a very social environment, he was always out to dinners for business, he was playing golf, he was with his poker buddies. He was the guy that you could count on to have alcohol, to have a good time with, to be the life of the party. When he gave that up, you might imagine he experienced tremendous resistance from all of those frontiers in which he used to be the guy that you could count on to have a drink. People didn't want him to change. He had our community who supported him. So every time he came back from another dinner where someone busted his balls, or his poker buddies who had something to say about it, or if he ever felt that he was particularly ganged up upon, he knew he could come back to us and be like, brother, we got your back. We know where you're heading and we support you in this new identity that you're creating. And we want you to succeed. That's the stuff that allowed him to meet those extraordinary headwinds. And so for you guys, when it comes to this behavior that you want to change in your life, it's not the changing of the behavior, it's the changing of identity, who you believe yourself to be. And oftentimes who you believe yourself to be is an artifact of the past. All of the unconscious belief systems, the behaviors, the evidence that you've collected that have been telling you who you are, which is bullshit. You can make a new decision right now to create the man that you want to be, a forward-looking conscious creation of your future. Prove it to yourself with small wins and surround yourself with the men who have normalized the behavior that you aspire to adopt as your new way of being. Final call to action here, fellas. Do you remember how about 15 minutes ago I said, I have a bone to pick with you because women do an infinitely better job of letting us know when we've produced something that's of resonance to them than you guys do? Well, here's your chance to change that. I want to hear from you. And I'm going to put my personal email in the show notes so you can reach out to me directly to answer this question. Like I said, Brian and I are putting together a series of episodes for the final quarter of this year that are honed in around one key theme around helping you to build the man you want to become in 2022. But I need to know from you, what are the most important topics that we can help you to explore to become that man? What are the most important topics that we can help you to explore so we can help you become the man that you desire to be in the year 2022? Whether it's high performance habits, whether it's executing on big things, whether it's how to stop lone wolfing, whether it's how to change your identity, whether it's about masculinity or sexuality, what are the areas that are of most importance to you? My personal email is in the show notes. Dominic@DominicQ.com, so you can reach out to me directly and let me know.